We're now going to go around the customer experience segment with our little yellow person, looking at the whole game. So far we've looked at the getting noticed quadrant, looking at what you can do to make people aware of you in your practice, then moving into the filling your funnel quadrant where we've looked at they've made the phone call, how do we then help them come and see you. So in the customer experience quadrant we have a series of stages where we're now in the building or face to face with that clinician. So we start with the arrival. So at this section, this is where actually arriving in the practice, arriving on the yard, arriving in the building, and what is that very, very first impression. So this is everything from car parking to cleanliness to smell to the whole feeling of the windows were clean, that the plants were alive in the plant pots, everything there that has an immediate subconscious impact on the owner. For equine practice, this one often is the view from the lorry driving up the drive, so be very aware of how easy that might be, parking, making sure that someone's swept that yard. And people are very forgiving. They know that, you know, horses and straw, wind blows, it might look a bit untidy, but the expectation is that your yard will look as good as their yard. So this is what happens on arrival and a key stage for you to audit as you go along. We then move into that first point of contact with a human being, and this is where smiles are really, really important. Whatever language you speak, wherever you live in the world, if you look at a human being and they look at you and they can see your concern, you automatically smile and it makes people feel more comfortable. This is just the first rule of communication, is that the common language of the smile makes people feel more at ease, however stressful the situation might be. For this to work, the owner and the member of the practice team actually have to look at each other, and the owner will be looking and craving eye contact. So at this very first primary contact, eye contact and a smile, even if you are on the phone or you're in mid-task, that recognition, that smile means so much to those owners and makes them feel that they're valued and wanted and all part of this rich customer experience. Following on from that is this whole process of how did you actually make that person feel? Do we look to see how we made them feel? Are we making them wait too long? Are we making them hang around? Is it quite distressing? Is it stressful? What did we do to make that customer experience from arriving and they haven't really done anything, they haven't seen the clinician yet, they're just in the process of checking in, waiting, finding out what the process is. Do they know what to do? Do they know where to go? Do they know who to say that they've arrived? Do they know what happens next? And this is where clear signage and clear indication of, you know, we'll be with you in a moment, please have a seat. Or if you park the lorry in that part of the yard and then come and sit in our reception area, we can then bring the clinician to you and then we can go and get your horse. People need to know what's going to happen so that they feel comfortable and they can feel trust. Waiting. Waiting is a really difficult thing for anybody to do when they're worried about a family member, and that family member may be a horse, a cat, a dog or a rabbit. It's a whole time where for them it feels a lot longer than it actually is. They're very worried, they're very concerned. So what do you do in this part of the game when you're sitting playing this with your colleagues, is to think, well, what can we do to make that waiting time pass quicker or happen less frequently? Is there something we can do, whether that's gathering feedback or making them a cup of tea or making sure that you understand why you're running late? Often it's a consequence of the next step on the customer experience, is what actually happens in the consult room, is look at what's making the owner wait, and actually it's something that if we can eradicate it, that would be a really good thing to do. So we're now in the consult room, we're now having a clinical experience on the yard, the owner is with the veterinary surgeon or with the veterinary nurse, and there is a consultation taking place. And in this special moment, this is a very intense moment for the owner. This is the whole part of the journey that they're paying for that opinion, they're paying for the recommendation, they're paying for the expertise. And in this particular segment, there is a whole host of things to do, of which consultation skills is one, and making the room, the consultation room in a small animal practice actually fit for purpose, so that there is eye contact throughout with the clinician, so that there is engagement between the pet and the owner. On yard and with our equine situation, this can be somewhat more challenging. You may be in the middle of a field, you may be on a yard, but always mindful that eye contact is critical, and making the most of those 10-15 minutes where you can explain and make a recommendation, and utilising the 7 steps of consultation. That would be really useful. The next stage is where we actually do something which is really hard for most owners in terms of the customer experience in a veterinary practice, is we remove the pet or the horse from them. We hospitalise, or we admit into hospital for imaging or for diagnostics or for blood sampling. So this separation of that pet from its owner, or that horse from its owner, is a really stressful time. And we need to be mindful of how we stay in touch. We need to be mindful of how we make this separation as easy as possible. The owner's biggest fear is they won't see that creature again, or something awful may happen, or that it can be incredibly distressing. However routine it may be to you, it isn't for the owner. So this experience of being separated, how do we keep in touch? How do we keep updated? How do we keep the owner involved in the care that's taking place? This is a really interesting step, and one that needs a lot of effort. The payment process is the last stage for most people in the customer experience segment. It's the time when the treatment programme may have finished. There's an end until the next time, whether that's a routine vaccination or a health checkup, is that the clinical process has stopped, so there is a termination of that particular moment in time, and there's a payment. The payment process can actually be quite distressing for several reasons. One is it's often after you've come out of a consult room, or it's after a period of waiting, collecting drugs, and we need to make it as seamless as possible. Consider ways of having payment prior to that last discharge appointment. For a big procedure, more and more people now are taking deposits prior to elective surgery. There may be elements of your insurance, whether you go with direct claims or not, is to try and make the payment process less challenging, make it a one-touch approach in the same way that contactless credit cards now make it easy for us. The idea that people are quite used to Oyster cards, and this idea that why does making a payment take so long and why is it so complicated, and we have to review what experience we have at the point of payment. So that's the customer experience section, and one for you to really review all of those steps so as to make it even more of a good experience for the owner and less of a troublesome one for them.